Che0nsu's here right now.
Yeah, that's very true. And I liked the bit he said about reading his opponent's hand and trying to navigate and figure out what cards are in their opponent's hand. We actually saw him do that to great success in game 1 of this series, which is just really cool to see. That's my favorite moments in Hearthstone, is when players are able to make reads and adjust their playstyle based onto the cards that they perceive are in their opponent's hand.
Yeah, I mean, the play that's best from your perspective is not always the best play because of what your opponent has. Obviously, if you could see both hands, it'd be an easy game.
Sure.
Like for us, for instance.
It's a very easy game for us, but these players have to figure it out by small tells, hesitations, and how players respond to specific certain situations.
Now, game 3, it's Che0nsu's Tempo Mage versus Cydonia and the Hunter build. And once again, not a very subtle build for the Hunter. It wants to get on the ground running and try to punish some weak starts.
The secret composition in this mid-range secret Hunter deck has 2 cat tricks, 2 freezing traps, and 2 snipes. So it does very well against a lot of spell-oriented classes with the cat tricks. And Snipe is what do you think of that card? It's been kind of falling in and out of these Hunter builds.
I personally really like Snipe. And one of the reasons I like it so much is this: if you're able to get on board, your opponent misses a 1-drop, and you have Snipe behind a Secret Keeper, you are looking good to keep control of that game for a very long time. And I think that's really important. And something else to consider is that the number of rogue players that could have potentially come into this top 8 is massive. And so having 2 snipes, say Cydonia gets down the road, he faces Pavel. 2 snipes against Pavel is a big deal. He's not just thinking about this match, he's thinking about, what about my semifinals? What about my finals match?
Makes a lot of sense. Gotta plan for the future if you're trying to plan to win.
Not a strong result from the Arcane Missiles either, 2 to face. Che0nsu definitely wanted those to be hitting minions.
This snipe is huge here. Cydonia can utilize this snipe here to completely stop Che0nsu from being able to get a Flame Waker off, and Che0nsu might just bank on it being, you know, one of the other 2 secrets, since that's more likely. And if he plays a Flame Waker into a snipe, that could be lights out.
Now, the one thing to think about, I think, for Che0nsu is what the secret means here. The fact that Cydonia isn't playing a 3-cost card here. There's no Animal Companion, there's no Cloaked Huntress, there's no Eagle Horn Bow. He's choosing to play this. I mean, it's basically got to be Cat Trick or Snipe in this spot.
Yeah, it has to be a good card for you to want to play it off curve. So Freezing Trap is not a particularly good card when your opponent has no minions in play.
Right.
So he can narrow it down to 2 traps, and when you narrow it down to 2 traps, he plays around it.
Yep, Loot Hoarder, a great pickup to help play around it, and you can see one of the reasons why. Picking up the extra card, offsetting the tempo a little bit here. Mana Worm not the strongest into your opponent's 2-3, but I think at this point, Che0nsu's got to take what he can get to try to cut into this board a little.
Yeah, he's behind right now, but that's kind of the design of the Tempo Mage. A lot of times you start up behind in games, but you're able to swing the board back with Flame Waker combos, utilizing the coin, utilizing Flame Waker, Arcane Missiles, all these sort of cheap spells with Flame Waker, and then you explode from that point onward.
Yep, Eagle Horn Bow to clean up there. Cydonia fearing the Mana Worm more than just wanting the development from Barnes on this turn, and that's a really interesting turn, I think.
Yeah,
It's tough to leave a Mana Worm up.
It is really tough. It threatens.
Has up a Barnes too.
But if you leave up the Mana Worm, then all Che0nsu has to do is play any spell, and then his Mana Worm can take a value trade on to your Secret Keeper, and you're starting to slip away from the board. So I like respecting it.
I think I do too. But the thing to really note more so about this is that Che0nsu, every single step of the way, has just had cards that are fairly weak, but are still manipulating Cydonia's play. Still changing the way he would ideally approach the situation. And this tracking is offering him 3 options that, frankly, I think he wants all of them.
Yeah, that's super awkward for him. He would love to have, you know, Savannah Highmane going into his turn 6, but the secret there is also very, very powerful.
Yep, and with the Barnes on board and no way to actually clear up without investing too much, forced to have a Barnes of his own, and so now the board tension really building, and I think this is a spot that it can favor Che0nsu. Look at his hand and the spells that he can have here.
Yeah, he doesn't quite have the ideal mana count for what he wants to do. Ideally, he'd like to be able to go Flame Waker, coined missiles, but that's just not in the cards for him yet. So the Flame Wakers are still a little bit weak. You could maybe consider going off with it now, though. And the reason why you'd want to go off with Flame Waker now, although it's tempting to wait on it for the huge explosive turn you could have later, It's your opponent's turn 6 coming up soon. They've played a tracking. They have filtered their deck out to specific cards, and the strongest card on turn 6, if you have the board control, is Savannah Highmane. And you need to have a big board development before turn 6 so that you can beat Savannah Highmane. Otherwise, you are going to fall way too far behind on the value game.
It is such a powerful card with the Hunters ahead. It is kind of the bread and butter spot for Hunters. Get ahead going into turn 6, drop Savannah Highmane.
That's the game plan.
Yeah, and here Che0nsu is he's trying to go to the ends of the earth to keep that from happening.
Yep.
And full clear, you know, it's a very high percentage to happen when you set up 4 1-health minions and get 5 missiles.
Yep. And I love this play from Che0nsu. He knows what the mid-range Hunters deck is designed to try and do. And now Cydonia, if he wants to play Highmane, one of the most powerful cards in the deck on curve, he would have to forego killing a Flamewaker, and that's very expensive.
And it's scary as well.
It's scary. It's a big risk, and he's going to take the risk.
I can't blame him for it either. I mean, he's got Animal Companion and Argent Horse Rider as his reload here. The Savannah Highmane's just going to have to pull some heat and hope that he can get to a safe Ragnaros turn. If he can pull Burn from Che0nsu's hand, there's a chance this Ragnaros sticks around for a while.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. A lot of times people see the Flamewaker and kind of overreact to it. And I think you're right that just one Flamewaker after Che0nsu has exhausted so many cheap spells isn't that big of a deal. So I think Cydonia's got a really solid read on the situation.
Either way, the Flamewaker able to clean up the board position. So Argent Horse Rider here, not doing a tremendous job trading, just the mage hero power able to wipe it up afterwards. But again, this was about forcing resources from Che0nsu to get to the Ragnaros turn. So this is kind of a multi-turn build that's been happening here for Cydonia.
Like sacrificing Savannah Highmane so that he could have the board going into turn 8.
Right.
Let's make
These drop, I mean, it's just been heat back and forth. This is bad news for Cydonia suddenly. Oftentimes when it comes down to these Ragnaros plays, the player who plays it first is at a disadvantage because the responding player has a chance for their Ragnaros to land the killing blow.
See where this Ragnaros goes?
I'm not even sure it matters right here.
Yeah, it's not too consequential where it lands. I think you would still prefer it to hit face.
That's the fastest play Che0nsu's ever made!
Yeah. I mean, he didn't have any other options here.
And he takes out the Ragnaros! And that is bad news for Cydonia. Down to weak utility cards, a 3-4, and Che0nsu is at 26 health still.
He's got a lot of work to do before that kill command's gonna be lethal.
And Che0nsu's not out of gas. He picks up a Firelance portal.
Wow.
I think that's lights out. That is enormous from Che0nsu. These last 2 turns have been absolutely destructive to Cydonia. That is it. The game is not ended, but it is over.
And I think the key moments in this game, if you kind of look at how and break down what really happened in this game, it was first off Che0nsu identifying he needs to go for the board control going in to turn 6 so he can beat Savannah Highmane. He correctly identifies that, goes for that, and then Cydonia having the choice between, you know, how does he want to develop here? Does he want to just remove the Flamewaker and kind of panic to it? Or does he want to set up the Highmane and try and stall to Rag? And he goes for the stall to Rag, hoping Che0nsu doesn't have his own Ragnaros. And unfortunately for him, Che0nsu had the Ragnaros. I still think he had a very solid game plan.
I agree.
And executed it very strongly.
Yep, and Che0nsu even making use of full utility here, the Arcane Blast to launch Flamewaker missiles to ensure lethal that turn. This has been a spectacular match between these two. I think the play has